All right. Welcome to your personalized deep dive.
Yeah.
Today we're diving into something I know you're really interested in. Productivity principles, ones that actually work. And specifically, we're going to be looking at 5 productivity principles I use that actually work. This is inspired by a video created by Mark Manson.
Yeah.
Now, anyone can give you a list of tips and tricks, but we want to go deeper.
Right.
We're going to uncover the why behind the what.
Yeah.
Those core principles that make tactics actually stick.
So what I really like about Mark's approach to this
Yeah.
is he starts off by acknowledging we're not robots.
Right.
His first principle is all about working with your biology, not against it.
That's so important.
And it's such an easy trap to fall into thinking there's one right way to be productive. When the truth is, we are all wired differently.
I mean, I've definitely fallen into that trap.
Oh, yeah.
Like trying to do the, wake up at 5 a.m. journal, conquer the world. And by lunchtime, I'm exhausted and behind.
Yeah.
Manson talks about how all those generic hacks backfired for him too.
Yeah.
So, so how do we figure out what works for us?
That's a great question.
Right.
That's where self-awareness comes in.
Okay.
It's like building a house. You wouldn't start without knowing the foundation, right?
Yeah.
Understanding your own rhythms,
Okay.
your peak energy times, those are so crucial. Are you a night owl?
Yeah.
Who gets a burst of creativity at midnight? Or do you hit the ground running first thing in the morning?
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
I am not a morning person.
Yeah.
I cannot do anything
I know.
before 9 or 10 a.m.
Absolutely.
It's just not happening.
It makes sense.
So you really have to pay attention to those patterns.
Exactly.
And it's not just about what time of day works best, right?
Right.
It's also about your personality, your work style.
Yes.
Some people thrive in really structured environments.
Yes.
Others need more flexibility. So the key is to figure out what environment allows you to do your best work.
And I think just as our bodies change.
Yeah.
Our productivity needs can shift as well.
Totally.
What worked for you 5 years ago might not be the best strategy now.
That's a good point.
Maybe you were a solo workhorse back then, but now you lead a team and your productivity depends on how well you delegate,
Right.
how well you collaborate.
That's a great point.
So don't be afraid to reassess and adapt as you grow.
So, okay, we've got the foundation down.
Okay.
We understand, our own rhythms and preferences.
Yeah.
Now, how do we actually get things done?
Right.
Manson's second principle is all about this idea of minimal viable action. What does that even mean?
Yeah. So think of it as the antidote to procrastination.
Okay.
We often get overwhelmed by the enormity of a task.
Yeah.
And that in itself stops us from even starting.
Right.
But what if instead of focusing on the whole mountain,
Yeah.
we just focused on that first step? So the minimum viable action is the smallest possible step you can take right now
Okay.
to move forward.
So instead of stressing out about writing an entire presentation, I could just open up a document
Exactly.
and just brainstorm a couple bullet points.
Exactly.
Or maybe if I've been putting off learning a new software program, the minimal viable action could just be watching a 5-minute introductory video.
Yeah. The point is to break down that daunting task into something so small,
Yeah.
so doable that you can't possibly say no.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's like tricking your brain into getting started.
Mm-hmm.
And once you take that first step, doesn't it create momentum?
Yeah.
You're more likely to keep going.
There's actually a psychological principle behind that
Oh, wow.
called the Zeigarnik effect.
Okay.
It suggests that our brains are wired to crave closure. So once we start something, we have this nagging feeling of incompleteness
Right.
until we finish it.
Yeah.
So that minimal viable action not only gets you started, but it actually makes you want to keep going.
Okay. So that is super helpful for anyone who struggles with procrastination.
Mm-hmm.
So we're working with our biology.
Yeah.
We're taking action.
Yeah, right.
But how do we know if we're actually making progress?
That's a great point.
And that's where Manson's third principle comes in,
Right.
measuring what you're working on.
Yeah. He's big on this.
Mm-hmm.
And for good reason, because if you're not measuring something,
Yeah.
how do you know if it's improving?
Right.
It's like trying to navigate without a map.
Totally.
But there's a catch. It's not just about blindly chasing numbers.
Right. I think he actually tells a story about how
Yeah.
he used to set daily word counts for his writing,
Right.
thinking that he was being super productive.
Yeah.
But then he realized that he was just churning out a ton of useless garbage just
Yeah.
to hit that arbitrary number.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the classic trap.
Yeah.
we can fool ourselves into thinking we're making progress when really we're just spinning our wheels. Right.
The key is to choose the right metrics,
Okay.
ones that actually reflect meaningful progress towards your goals.
So how do we figure out what to measure?
Yeah.
What's like a good starting point for our listeners?
That's a great question, and it really depends on what you're trying to achieve. You know, if you're writing a book, word count might be a relevant metric,
Yeah.
but it's only part of the picture.
Right.
You also want to consider things like the quality of the writing,
Yeah.
the clarity of your ideas, whether you're hitting your deadlines.
So it's not just about quantity, it's about quality
Yes,
and impact.
exactly.
We need to measure the things that actually matter,
Yes.
the things that move us closer to our goals.
I think those metrics can also change over time.
Oh, that's a good point.
What you measure at the beginning of a project
Yeah.
might not be what you need to measure later on.
Right.
It's an ongoing process
Yeah.
of evaluation and adjustment.
Okay, so we've covered working with our biology.
We're taking action
Right.
and measuring progress.
Yes.
Now let's dive into the emotional side of productivity.
Okay.
Manson's fourth principle is all about leveraging your emotions instead of trying to fight them.
Yeah.
And this is where things get really interesting for me.
Yeah. It's so true.
Because he argues that productivity isn't about becoming some kind of
Right.
emotionless robot.
Emotionless robot.
It's about understanding and harnessing
Yes.
our emotions to fuel our work.
And, so often we try to suppress or ignore our feelings,
Yeah.
especially in a professional setting.
Oh, totally.
But the truth is, our emotions play a huge role
Yeah.
in our motivation, our creativity,
Yeah.
our ability to focus.
I can definitely relate to that. Like when I'm feeling stressed or overwhelmed, it's almost impossible to get anything done.
Right.
But when I'm feeling inspired
Yeah.
and energized,
Yes.
I can power through my to-do list like it's nothing.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where passion comes in.
Okay.
Manson talks about the importance of finding work that you genuinely enjoy
Yeah.
and care about.
Okay.
He doesn't buy into that myth of the dream job that's never actually work,
Right?
but he does believe that passion is a key driver of excellence
Okay.
and long-term success.
I think a lot of people struggle with this idea.
Yeah.
Because we're told to separate our work life from our personal life.
Right.
But the reality is,
Yeah.
we're not robots.
We're not robots, no.
We bring our whole selves to work,
Exactly.
including our emotions
Yeah.
and our passions.
And I think it's not always about finding the perfect job.
Okay.
It's about finding the aspects of your current work
Yeah.
that bring you energy and fulfillment. It's about identifying what you're good at, what you enjoy,
Right.
and how you can leverage those strengths
Yeah.
to make a meaningful contribution.
So it's not just about finding a job you love.
Right.
It's about finding the love within your job.
Yes.
Focusing on those things
That's a
that make
big
you
number.
feel
Yeah.
challenged and engaged.
And remember, passion can be cultivated.
That's interesting.
It's not something you either have or you don't.
Got
It's
it.
something you can develop
Yeah.
and nurture over time.
Okay, so that's super empowering.
Yeah.
We've covered 4 of Manson's principles.
Right.
Now let's wrap things up with the 5th and final one,
Okay.
which might seem a bit counterintuitive.
Okay.
He says that more is not always better.
Mm.
What's he getting at here?
So he's challenging this idea that productivity is all about working harder and longer. In our always-on culture, it's so easy to get caught up in the hustle,
Yeah.
to think that we need to be constantly pushing ourselves to the limit.
I am definitely guilty of that.
Yeah.
There's always this nagging feeling that I should be doing more,
Right.
working harder, checking more things off my list.
Yeah.
But I'm starting to realize that that's not always the best approach.
And Manson actually tells this funny anecdote about this in his video.
Oh, really?
He talks about a time when he stayed up late
Yeah.
writing a 4th YouTube script.
Okay.
Even though he was already exhausted, he thought he was being super productive.
Yeah.
But then he woke up the next day
Oh.
and realized that the entire script was garbage
Oh, no.
and had to be completely scrapped.
Ouch.
Yeah.
I think we've all been there.
I think we've all been there.
Sometimes pushing harder just leads to burnout
Yes.
and lower quality work.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to recognize that Rest and recovery are not luxuries.
Awesome.
They're essential components of sustainable productivity.
Okay.
You know, when we give ourselves time to recharge,
Yeah.
both physically and mentally, we come back to our work feeling refreshed,
Yes.
energized,
Yeah.
and more focused.
So it's not about burning ourselves out.
Right.
It's about working strategically
Yeah.
and prioritizing our well-being.
It's about finding that sweet spot
Yeah.
where we're maximizing our output
Mm-hmm.
without sacrificing our health and happiness in the process.
And that brings us back to Manson's first principle,
Yeah, full circle.
working with
Yeah.
our biology,
Yes.
not against it. It's funny, we talk about productivity all the time,
Yeah.
but I don't think we often stop to ask ourselves, like, what it actually means
Right.
to be productive.
Yeah.
You know, it's become this, like, buzzword, this
Yeah.
pressure to constantly be doing more, achieving more. But what if true productivity is about working smarter,
Right.
not just harder?
Yeah.
What if it's about, like, creating a work life that feels sustainable and fulfilling,
Right.
rather than constantly striving for more?
That is a really profound question.
Yeah.
And I think Manson's principles offer a framework
Yeah.
for answering it. You know, he's not just giving us tips and tricks.
Right.
He's inviting us to like re-examine our relationship with work,
Yeah.
to think about what truly matters to us,
Right.
and to create a work style
Okay.
that aligns with our values and priorities.
I love that. It's
Yeah.
about taking back control, right?
Absolutely.
Not letting ourselves be defined by some arbitrary standard of
Yeah.
productivity,
Yeah,
but figuring out what works best for us as individuals.
exactly. And it's a journey, not a destination.
Oh,
There's no one-size-fits-all approach.
right.
What works for you today
Yeah,
might not work for you tomorrow.
that's true.
The key is to be open to experimentation, to pay attention to what's working and what's not,
Right.
and to be willing to adjust your approach as needed.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
I want to leave our listeners with a challenge.
Okay.
We've covered a lot of ground today,
We have.
but the real work begins now.
Right.
It's time to take all of this insight
Mm-hmm.
and put it into action.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it doesn't have to be overwhelming.
Okay.
You know, start small.
Yeah.
Pick one of Manson's principles
Right.
that really resonated with you.
Mm-hmm.
And think about one small change
Yeah.
you can make in your work life to apply it.
Like maybe it's setting aside dedicated time
Yeah.
for focused work
Mm-hmm.
during your peak energy hours.
Exactly.
Or maybe it's like breaking down a really daunting project into smaller, more manageable tasks.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's just giving yourself permission
Mm-hmm.
to take a break
Yeah.
when you need it.
Absolutely.
Whatever it is, remember that even small changes
Mm-hmm.
can have a big impact over time.
Yes.
The important thing is to start somewhere,
Right.
to keep experimenting,
Yeah.
and to keep learning.
I think that's the perfect note to end on.
Yeah.
Productivity isn't about perfection.
Okay.
It's about progress. It's about constantly striving to improve,
Yeah.
to find what works best for us,
Mm-hmm.
and to create a work life that feels aligned,
Yeah.
energizing,
Yeah.
and fulfilling.
So keep learning, keep exploring, and keep diving deep.